So we've got the bottom half of the outline of the torso more or less done. So we're going to look at the top half now, and we're going to start with the head shape. So we're going to start on the left side, and what we want to do, we want to put a slight slopey bit in between here where this triangle joins this triangle. Sorry, my sketchbook's trying to run away there. And then what we want to do is bring a slightly curved line up to about 3/4 of the way up the edge of this triangle, maybe just over half. And then what we're going to do is start to put his pointy head shape on. So I'm going to curve this round like so, and it's just, as you can see, it's sort of like it's almost like a bit of an S shape in a way, but not quite. Continue to bring that curve around. What we're aiming for is for this to more or less join up over here with this side of the triangle. So we want it to overlap the edge of this triangle ever so slightly, so we don't want it to join up perfectly, because we want to bring this side in a bit more and add a bit more detail here and curve that out a bit more. So bring this line down, and once you reach roughly in line with where this curve begins on this side, we want to put a little outward curve, not too big. This is where his eye is going to go in. You might find this needs to be moved further in, but it's just to give a rough idea for now. And then we want another outward curve. This one's a bit more sort of triangular and pointy, and this comes down, and his mouth is going to be joining up to that. And then once we've reached this point here, we want to put in a couple more smaller, bumpier curves. He's got lots of little creases going on in this area. So this leads us down into this arm here. So what we want to do again is bring this edge, and we want to make it a little bit raised and curvy, just to simplify his squidgy bits again. And then we're going to carry this line down. Once we get roughly to the end of this triangle, we want to start to curve that around, and that's going to bring us into the point of his hand. So keep curving that around, and then he's got a little point on the end of his hand there, and as you can see, I haven't quite got my triangle wide enough. Ideally we want this line to come down, so I'm not using the edge of this triangle here as a guideline at the moment, because if I did, it would be just a little bit too narrow. So a lot of drawing stuff like this is just using a little bit of what's the word I want really, intuition on, you know, where to make decisions like this. Just really look at it and think, is this going to be roughly the right proportions, and then if not, just adjust it accordingly. So bring this down, and as he reaches his armpit, we want to put in a couple more lumpy bits, and then bring that down to join on onto the side here. So again, as you can see, I've cut out where I'd brought this line up as far as here. I've kind of cut that out because his arm would look a little bit too narrow and you'd lose some of this squidge around here. So that's why I've done that. And then we're going to move across to the other side now. And this side is fairly straightforward. We're going to take where we put in this little curvy piece here and bring this down the shape of the triangle. So it's kind of got a gradual curve down. And again, once we get roughly to the end of the triangle, what we're going to do is we're going to curve this one down and around. It's going to go kind of under itself. And we want to put a bit of a under curve like that on, and then what we're going to do then is just join the edge of that up to the bottom edge of the triangle, and we're going to bring that along. Once you get about halfway down, we're going to start to angle it sort of down towards this way slightly, not massively, just a little bit, sort of takes away from the edge of the guide triangle. And then we're going to start to put in some creasy, lumpy bits, similar to what we did with the edge of the head up here, down here. Put one more in, and then that joins up to the side of the torso. Okay, so we've got a basic outline, so next we want to put in some detail. And things like his eyes and face, so that's the next step. So we've got our basic outline, and as you can see, in between sort of ending the last set of steps and starting this next one, I've been around and I've rubbed out all these little untidy lines that we didn't need, so I'd recommend that you do that too. I'd also recommend to use a putty rubber for this stage. If you'll find if you use your sort of normal eraser, getting into sort of bits where there's, you know, perhaps little bits of detail, you're likely to lose some of your lines and have to redraw them. Whereas a putty rubber, you can just roll it into a tiny little point and get nicely into corners and things. So if you can get hold of a putty rubber, I'd definitely recommend to use one of those. So the next thing we're going to do is put his face on him. So I'm going to bring the camera up to the top half. So we're going to start by putting his mouth in, and his mouth starts on the left side, roughly from this sort of curved piece we put in where this triangle joined that one, and we're going to start it roughly there, and it kind of curves around a little bit, and then curves around this way. And what we want to aim for is to sort of join up with kind of the bottom edge of this pointy piece here. Like that. And then we want to bring this here down, and it's quite narrow to begin with. And then as we come down, it starts to form that big devious grin that he has. And then we're going to come back over to this side. So what we want to do is just curve that round so it almost joins the edge there, but not quite. And we've got a line where it sort of comes this way, then we've got a bit of a crease again, and a little bumpy bit, and then that comes round and joins up there. mouth's a fairly simple shape. It's just making sure that this kind of goes narrow here and this curves up around here. And then the next step is to put in a little bit more detail around the edge of his mouth. So just below here, a sort of a line that follows the edge of his mouth down, and it gets to this sort of curve here, and then it comes down that way, and then along this edge here, a couple of lines. We've got another one over here, comes down like that, and then there's a slight line here. It's a bit creased that comes round, and this sort of joins up on here. Obviously once this is shaded in, it looks a little bit more effective. And then above the top there's a few sort of creasy bits. We're just going to put in some very small, you might not be able to see these too well on the video, little lines. Those go down about as far as there. That gives a rough mouth shape. Okay, so the next step is to put his eyes in. And so we're going to start with the one on the left, which we put this curve in before when we were outlining the head. And this eye starts from sort of the bottom of that curve. So we're going to bring it down, and we want about roughly where that finishes, about this much gap between here and where the mouth starts. So we're just going to curve that one up, and the curve should kind of flow nicely into the bottom of that curve shape there that we put in before. And then we can put in a bit of a curve line here, and then the other eye, which attaches onto this, that one has a little bit more shape to it than the first one did. One comes around and joins onto there, so as you can see on this corner it's got a little bit of a point to it and this sort of shape. And then we want to put in a little bit of a curve line there, and just bring one in there just to give it a little bit of expression. And then this line we can kind of curve around a bit more as well, a bit of a bump shape in the middle. And then he's got a curved line that comes round there, and we've got a faint one that joins on from there. So we've got the outline of his head. Thanks, bye for now.